Throughout the ages, man has sought to look behind the veil that hides him from great cinema. And through the ages, certain men have listened to half a clue and seen. Is it some quality of the show itself, or does the listener merely use it to turn his mind inward? Who knows? But the films come, slowly shifting their forms. Visions come. Wait! The shifting shapes begin to clear. I see a group of idiots spouting hot takes and shitposts about film. Are they man or beast? This team has been examined by our nation's foremost scientists and have been pronounced unequivocally human. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you Half a Clue. I am your host, the grotesque, the grisly. I am here with our very own Colossus. He could crack your skull with his toes. Miles, the gentle giant.
Hello.
We also have with us here today a name you may recognize, for he is the greatest local celebrity of our time, the elegant and exquisite Blake.
You forgot to say gorgeous.
And last but most certainly not least, the oddity from the east, Rosie, the magnificent.
Hey.
Welcome. Today we're talking about Nightmare Alley.
Great movies.
Yeah, both of them, actually.
Yes.
The original 1947 film and the newest, most magnificent, the new Guillermo del Toro adaptation.
Yeah,
Woo.
it was great.
Also called
Yeah.
Nightmare Alley. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't realize it was a remake. I watched both back to back, and I didn't realize that they were.
Did you think they were just based on two different things and they just happened to have the same name?
I thought that coincidentally they shared a lot of plot points and had the same characters. And I knew there was a book that it might have been based off of, but I just thought all three things were different.
Just separate
There's-
properties? Okay.
Loosely
Yeah.
connected.
Yeah.
No,
yeah.
I wouldn't even say loosely. I just thought, wow, what a coincidence that two exact movies called Nightmare Alley would be about a fake medium that cons rich people out of their money and things don't go so well for him. I was like, whoa.
Yeah, what are the
Yeah.
chances of
Yeah.
that?
Now you're
It turns
telling
out
me they're
zero.
connected?
But yeah.
I guess I want to start off with the author of the novel, William Lindsay Gresham. He was kind of a one-hit wonder of the book world for the
Sad
most
to
part.
say.
It was like
Yeah.
the Soldier Boy of the book world.
Yeah, before Nightmare Alley, he didn't really have much success. After Nightmare Alley, even less. He did get more things published because his name was there and he had that reputation, but nothing ever sold very well. And his life kind of just didn't go so well for him at that point.
Fucking sucked.
Yeah, he ended up having his wife leave him for C.S. Lewis because she was a C.S. Lewis fanboy.
She was like, oh
Or
my
a
God,
fangirl.
Narnia,
Yeah.
dude. I can't
Mhm.
get enough of this.
Oh, my
Yeah,
Narnia.
and then he ended up committing suicide to end his life. Unfortunately, and recent information points to it being due to him finding out that he had cancer.
What a great start to our show.
So much
And,
fun, you guys.
Honestly, though, looking at his life, it does parallel a lot of kind of the characters that he wrote about. The
It's a-
very dark, broody.
Rise and fall.
Yeah.
Really. What, was he not an alcoholic? I feel like I heard that someplace. too.
I think that he had some struggles with alcoholism, and he had seen definitely the terrors that alcoholism could cause, and that
Yeah.
was a very major plot focus
Yeah.
of both the movies and especially the novel.
That's
You know what
crazy. I
they
just
say.
watched these two movies, and both of them deal with a guy who falls to alcoholism. But you're
Yeah.
gonna tell me that this is connected too?
Yeah, it's wild, man. So let's get into a bit with the first Nightmare Alley adaptation, which came out in 1947.
It's
Mhm.
my second favorite black and white movie about carnivals,
Yeah.
What's your first?
Carnival of Souls,
Carnival
which
of
we are
Souls?
going to cover one day.
Hmm.
It's like a horror movie from the 60s.
Ooh, stay
Ultra
tuned.
low budget. We will cover it one day, and I'm going to make you guys all watch it. 'Cause I
Mark
love
his
it.
words.
Which is that one where they're like, one of us. Google gobble, Google gobble. You know what I'm talking about?
I
There's
have
like
no
that
idea what
classic
you're
one. It's
talking
more
about.
about like it like showcased like basically like freaks,
Oh,
sideshow
was that
freaks.
the Betty Boop, like her
No,
original?
no,
that
it
was
was
the original Betty Boop thing.
No, it was a
Was it
live
originally
action
in Betty
thing. I
Boop?
mean, it may
Yeah.
have been.
Yeah, no, the one
taken
of
by
us
that.
Google Gobble Google
If only
Gobble.
Philip
That was
was here, he would
that was
tell
like
you
the
exactly
original
where it came
Betty
from.
Boop film, I believe.
Well,
yeah.
Yes.
Okay, no, there's a live action version, which is what I'm talking about, which
Oh.
is like from I want to say it's like from the 30s or something, but I don't know. We're now talking about
Yeah.
stuff we
Who
don't know
did it
about.
first?
I think
Let us know
anybody-
in the
Yeah.
comments.
Yeah. Okay, so the original Nightmare Alley was it was directed by Edmund Gold, who had directed other such films as Love, Grand Hotel, Dark Victory, and The Razor's Edge. Produced
Golden.
by George Jessel, based on the novel, of course, Nightmare Alley.
Big
and,
Willie.
Yeah, and written by Jules Furthman. So it was distributed by 20th Century Fox. Much like this one is not. It's technically 20th Century, which sucks,
Yeah,
but whatever.
and the weird thing was they kind of tried to shelve this movie.
Yeah.
Because Tyrone Power, who was a big proponent, he really enjoyed the book, and he was pushing along with the director to get this movie made by 20th Century Fox. At that point, he had starred in a number of really good movies that did very well for the studio as that handsome kind of interesting leading man
He
playing
definitely-
swashbucklers and things of that ilk. And they didn't want to tarnish his image with this movie.
Yeah, like apparently there was some backlash from the audiences. They thought that he was it was harder for them to accept him as basically a villain, and that's interesting.
Okay.
So what do you guys think about the film? What are your thoughts overall on this? I want to start with you, Miles.
So I guess I'll kind of get into some other stuff about why I was disappointed with this movie a little bit later, but I think that there were a lot of things that it did right. And one of the major things that I think it did right was that it tended to focus kind of closely to the book. And just for its time, it really seemed like they jumped through a lot of hoops to make it through the censors.
Oh yeah.
Because, you've got a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily censor approvable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a scene where the geek is eating a chicken very similar to the new one,
Yeah.
but they had to cut it out.
Apparently they
Too
had like
intense.
hundreds of pages of notes from the censors and of what they couldn't do,
Yeah.
which, the only other time you see that is like on the Eric Andre show.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he gets away with a lot.
Mhm.
He gets away with pretty much
Yeah,
almost
but
everything.
Those are modern censors.
Yeah,
and-
yeah.
But back then,
Thank
it
God Eric
was-
Andre wasn't an entertainer back
um,
then.
it was
I think they would have killed him.
Yeah.
They're just like, this is no good.
Yeah, they were very heavy-handed, and that's why a lot of the tropes of film noir arose, was because of how heavy-handed the MPAA and the censors were about what you could and couldn't show in film.
Dark
you
shadows.
Yeah, you couldn't show people profiting from like illegal activities and things like that, which did make it hard throughout the movie.
You
Uh,
don't want to
yeah.
inspire anybody.
Which that's why at the end of like almost all film noir movies, the gangsters and the guys who you're following, and you're like, oh yeah, these are the guys who are gonna one up everybody. They're doing illegal activities, so they have to kind
Lose.
of lose at the end.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's a lot like the femme fatale, that
Mhm.
characterization that kind of became a thing, and it, especially obviously in film noir and everything, they almost always ended with either like dying or coming down to some tragic fate.
Yeah.
Because again, you couldn't have these kind of women having winning after being so deadly or smart.
Yeah. Which was
This
one
movie
thing.
kind of circumvents, actually.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah.
Which actually that really surprised me about the ending of this movie.
Yeah.
The additional scene at the end where Molly finds him
Mhm.
and she saves him from being the geek. And I understand that they kind of added that in to help parallel the relationship between Xena and Pete
Pete?
a little bit more.
Yeah.
And I think that it worked well. That was kind of the direction that I think that they took this film, is that they were really paralleling the relationship between Xena and Pete and the relationship between Molly and Stanton. And they did that very well. And I think it was an interesting take that they chose to go with.
Well, what do you think about it?
I want to talk about the ending now, because that's of course one of the biggest differences between the Guillermo version and this version. I'll just say it right now, I like the Guillermo del Toro ending more.
Same.
But in this version, I think I'm okay with it because of the reasons you've already stated,
Mhm.
that it is directly kind of a parallel. Now he's like a drunken loser that Molly is going to have to take care of, much like Zima had to take care of. But I think, I don't know. I know it's just an of the time thing, but like the fact that the guy literally walks in front of the camera and is like, he flew too high. Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
I have a pet peeve when the themes are like directly said to you.
They
Spelled
kind
out.
of had to do that,
But
though.
no,
based
I'm
on
aware.
what
I'm aware. But I don't know. Maybe I just like the downer ending. But I get what you're saying about the parallels, and I do think that is interesting. But I think I prefer.
I will say at this point, the downer ending, that's very much more
The book, right?
Yeah, that's basically how the book ends.
Yeah,
is
so-
him basically getting to that very low point. Yeah.
I think, hey guys, I also think that the downer ending's way better. I think that leading up to the ending, it kind of shows you, spells it out, like this could go either way if he goes down this dark path. You know, he's either going to end up like Pete or he's going to end up like the geek. But the thing is, he wrongs everyone, including Molly,
Yeah.
and that's why he ends up a fucking geek. Sorry.
No,
Mhm.
no, I get that because okay, so
Oh, should we define geek for people?
Yeah, geek.
So-
When I first watched it, I was
I've
like,
never heard that term.
what?
well,
You
I mean,
know-
I imagine if you're listening to this, you've probably seen at least one of these
Well,
two
maybe
films.
Yeah.
they haven't though. So a geek is like it's the bottom totem pole.
In a carnival
So-
sideshow.
But
thing.
probably like in society in general. I mean,
Yeah.
shit. You work. They put you work for a carnival. They put you in a cage and they feed you live chickens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and other such things, and they degrade you. You sleep in like a
You're-
haystack in a cage.
And part of the act is just as bad as you've become. Is like just as important as the act of eating chickens.
Yeah.
It's like they treat you like you're subhuman.
well,
basically.
and
Yeah,
I mean,
and they're all
you
like
literally
addicts and
are
drunks.
at that point where you've gotten to the point where you're okay with being subhuman in order to become the geek. It's not something that they're forced into necessarily. It's something that, they've got the choice. It's just one of those choices. It's like, do I get my booze, which I'm horribly addicted to, or do I, not bite this head off the chicken?
well, yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing. It's like it's super manipulative and
Hmm.
ultimately extremely cruel and inhumane to do to these people because they are like
Oh, yeah.
like they say they spell out more in the new film than they do in the original film, but they find these people either from mental wards or people who are just mentally unsound, and then they manipulate them like either by drugging them and like making them feel like, oh yeah, like this is great, I'm okay with this, and then telling them like this is temporary,
Yeah.
just temporary,
And they couldn't explain that in the original movie
Um,
because of the censors also.
Okay. So if we're gonna get into differences, which is a little early, but I do want to make this point while we're
Well,
on the topic.
Okay, well, really, really quick. I just want to say that ending, because what we were talking about, that it was actually tacked on by Daryl Zanuck, who
A
was
sign
the
of his weakness.
yeah, he
Yeah.
was the studio head of Fox at the time, and he specifically added that ending scene with Stan and Molly reuniting because he thought the film was too much of a downer, which makes
Yeah.
sense. I
Um,
understand for the time, but I feel like that they totally lose their teeth.
Just while we're on the topic of the whole like introducing the concept of the geek.
Yeah.
I actually kind of like the original version's approach more. I understand what you're saying, and you're probably right. That in the new film, of course, they really go into detail. Willem Dafoe's like, oh, we trick them, we lure them in with a drink, and we say it's only temporary until we find a real geek. And I get that they expand into it more, but I think because of that, part of my problem with the film, and I understand it's based on not only a movie but a book, so it makes it a little hard. But like from 10 seconds into the Guillermo del Toro movie, I was like, oh, he's going to become a geek.
Yeah.
I like how in the original 1947 film, it's not quite as obvious, I don't think, because it's just like, okay, the geek's like a drunk. Like Pete spells that out. He's like, oh, you get a bottle a day and a night to sleep it off, and you get to be a geek, and that's all you have to do. And that's why it makes sense for them.
Hmm.
So I think because of that, it's kind of more in the background. It's just not as on the surface obvious as opposed to like we see like Bradley Cooper like hanging out with the geeks and like giving them cigarettes, and Willem Dafoe's like the way to break a geek. Like I don't know. It's just it's obvious to anybody that's ever watched any other movie that yes,
Hmm.
Bradley Cooper is going to be in a cage at the end of the movie. I don't know how yet, but
Yeah.
it'll
Yeah,
happen.
So
I think
at
that's the key difference, though.
Yeah,
but, yeah.
for the book, it was kind of a mixture between the two, which I feel it kind of towed the line more in the middle. And I think it worked better in the long run because you do have that speech explaining how geeks are made. That kind of is the foreshadowing, the Chekhov's gun, if you might say, in the book of like, okay, yeah, he put this thing out here. This is how somebody becomes a geek. And then as you see Stan's descent, you're like, oh, he's going to become a geek, or you start suspecting it. But they don't really focus on that in the original movie at all. And it's very like,
Well, I'll say that I
Dramatic.
agree with
Yeah.
Blake, because as soon as like Defoe is like explaining how you turn a geek and everything, and you see him like hanging out with them, I was like, yeah, like he's definitely going to become one. But I'm interested to see how that's going to happen.
But-
I'm like, how is he going to end up there?
Okay,
like,
but
they put a lot more focus on the geek.
But you're
before
saying
that.
You're saying at the point in the movie where Willem Dafoe's explaining it. I'm talking the first fucking scene when Bradley Cooper walks, or it's like the second scene.
Well,
Bradley Cooper walks in and sees a geek and clearly is kind of disgusted by it. I immediately was like, oh, okay. So that's going to be him.
well,
in a
that's
couple
because
hours.
the film focuses in on the geek.
Yeah,
more.
no, and I know.
Sorry. It's
And
yeah.
I'm aware that this is the point the movie is trying to make. It wants you to think that, but I don't know. To me, I just kind of like how the original handled that a little bit better.
Mhm.
But that being said, I do kind of have to criticize both movies for the process of him becoming a geek being a little too fast for me.
Yes.
oh, I'd say
And both
especially with the
movies.
first one.
I'd say both movies.
So the thing is,
they basically have the same scene. In my opinion.
if you look at it, in the book, he leaves the carnival like after the first sixth of the book. You know, you still have a whole lot of story going on after they leave the carnival, and then they compress that all down. But they put more focus on the carnival and stuff like that because that's where you can get the more interesting flare shots and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
It's
And
Fun costumes.
yeah, and you don't have to work as much with effects.
Kooky characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I will say, so like going back to like the original film, like that was some of the biggest gripes I had, like with like if we're gonna go through it, like the beginning of the film when they were first introduced, I like how it kind of just jumps in faster. Like it's like, okay, here we are, he's already working here, he's a new guy, we get that. He's still kind of like learning his way around. He doesn't even know what the geek is and stuff.
I think his assholery is a little more obvious. in the
Yeah,
first one.
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Especially when it comes to his relationship with Xena in this
Yes.
film compared
Ugh.
to the
Yeah,
new one.
and that's
Scumbag.
definitely more what do you call
Book
it?
accurate.
Yeah, more book
And I like
accurate
that.
right
and I
there.
like that better
Because
by the way.
in the book he does start off working as a magician. So he's doing like little magic tricks and stuff, tricks with coins. He's kind of the lead in to Xena's act where
Yeah.
he's performing on stage and they're selling like little trinkets and stuff to people to mystify them.
Yeah,
and
and I liked that, like in the original one, it seems more like he's kind of like, he's manipulating Xena a bit, like he's a little bit like trying to get some stuff out of her. He wants to know the what's it, the code. The code is like a big deal, and he's kind of like going behind Pete's back a bit with her, right? And then eventually, once he accidentally kills Pete, which is way more like apparent in this one too, because it's like in the new one it seems more like it could be like you don't know whether
be
if it's
either
for
way.
real or not. It seems more like it probably was on purpose, but in this one it seems like it's a straight up accident. He's like, oh shit, like I didn't mean to do that, which I didn't really like as much, to be honest. But I do like how as like his relationship with Xena progresses and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do the show with her, but he's already kind of sick of her. And then like he immediately just kind of switches over to Molly because he likes her better. He's like,
Mhm.
Molly seems like she's easier
Got
to,
it.
to deal with. Yeah, and like whatever. And he ultimately kind of makes the right choice, which is terrible because like she just sticks with him the whole time. And I don't know. That's one thing I don't like, is that like I feel like Molly is way too
Sympathetic for him. Or
sympathetic and
with
doughy-eyed,
him.
relating to him. Like,
yeah, she's way too forgiving with him in the original.
yeah,
Like, it's like Molly, fuck this guy.
yeah,
Like,
seriously,
Yeah.
it's like red flag. This guy's a piece of shit.
this guy
But-
is using people's emotions to steal everything
Yeah.
from them. And in the new version, she gets that a little bit better.
Yes.
So that's one of the problems with Molly's character. In the book, she's expressed as being incredibly childish. She even has a line in the book where she's like, "Oh, I won't sleep with a man unless it's somebody I could share my toothbrush with." Like,
What?
That's her thought of like
Ew.
how you decide if a man's acceptable to sleep with.
I
Is,
kinda
is
get
he
what
somebody
that
that you would
means.
share your toothbrush?
kinda
I mean,
get what
okay,
I get what
and
that
things
means.
like
I
that.
get what she's
Yeah.
saying, where
Yeah.
she's like, this guy at least has, clean teeth, right? Like that's at one point they call him, right? They're like, you're just a hick with clean teeth or straight teeth or whatever.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I get that, but I just feel like in this version, the 47 version, she's way too forgiving. She just kind of goes along with everything, and at the end when he's just like, again, she doesn't want to do this job. Like she really doesn't want to do it. She's like, I don't want to fake to be this guy's dead wife or whatever. But she's like, and at the end, like after she does it, and he kills the guy, and they're running away, she's like, Stan, I love you, and he's like, yeah, I know. He's just like, it's like, yeah, I know, whatever, shut up, woman, let's get out of
That
here.
was like one of my favorite character moments for him, though. He
Dude,
just goes, he pulls a Han Solo. He
hilarious.
just goes, I know.
Yeah, he just doesn't even say anything. Yeah,
Oh,
sorry, what were you
Miles
saying?
did point out to me earlier how in the book, Molly's supposed to be like just an
Yeah.
actual kid.
Yeah,
like,
she's
underage.
she's basically a kid. They never express how old she is, but from the subtext of the book, you get that she basically, her father died, and her grandparents were like, "Well, you're gonna go work as a dancer at what they called a cooch show,"
Oh God.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
Oh
Um,
no.
which isn't as bad as it sounds. It
Sounds
was
pretty
she was
bad.
just a Hawaiian dancer.
Oh
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Sounds pretty bad.
Good choice.
Yeah.
Yeah, why call it a cooch show?
That's what
False
they called it.
advertising.
I
Maybe
know.
it's named after the American coot.
Yeah.
That's a type of bird.
Yeah, but with that in mind, though, with her being like actually underage and probably like in the 1947 one, they're like, "Well, are you gonna marry her?" Like implying like he's taking her like innocence, you know?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And then now in like the newer one, when Bruno is like the father figure, with all that in mind, it makes so much sense for her to be like doughy-eyed and easily manipulated and more sympathetic, because this is like the love of her life.
Yeah, as
This
far
is
as she knows.
her one and only love she's ever had.
I like her portrayal more in the new one,
Mhm.
personally.
I agree. I think that like perhaps she was better cast in the original one because the lady who plays Molly, Colleen Gray, I feel like she's just like she
Quite a
just
looker.
seems way more like kind of like this soft,
Doughy-eyed and-
doughy-eyed
Yeah.
little
Well-
like younger girl.
And
Like
A
they're
sweet
they're
child.
thankfully they
borderline.
don't make her like she's fucking 16,
They're,
but like
they're,
they
they're borderline different characters, though.
Yeah, no,
in
I
terms
agree.
of how they react.
I would
to-
say they're
totally
incredibly different characters
Totally
in,
different.
in how just they act and their personalities and stuff too.
yeah.
Because the Molly in the 1947 version and in the book is driven by this life of luxury, living in hotels, kind of living up to the lifestyle of their father, who was kind of a booze hound and a track fiend, going to the racetracks and betting on horses and stuff. That's the lifestyle that she grew up knowing, traveling around with him, and that's the lifestyle that she enjoyed. So as long as Stan provided that for her, she was happy, and she didn't really have that kind of emotional loving connection to him that she does in the newer movie.
Yeah, I feel like in the newer one she has more agency. She actually
Mhm.
has like a personality and like a voice. It's not much because I feel like she was very underdeveloped for the most part, but I like how she's basically like,
she
I
stands
think-
up for herself much
Yeah.
more.
Mhm.
Yeah,
es-
go new Molly.
especially by the end when she finally agrees to do the thing and she does the whole spiel where she's like, this is how I knew when electricity was too much, like I knew when to stop. She's like, I know this is where I need to stop. This is it.
Mhm.
Like after this, I'm done. Like, and she leaves and she keeps to her word. And then after he fucking murders 2 people in front of her, she's like, I am out of here. Not even gonna talk about it. She's like, I'm just walking away. And it's like, good for you, Molly.
Yes,
Mhm.
Go Molly.
Yeah. So okay. So is there anything else you guys want to talk about for the original?
I do, but I think it has more to do with the newer one, so
So,
I'm going to hold off on some opinions.
I wanted to ask you guys, what did you guys think of the introduction of the therapist in this one, and the role of the therapist and how
Oh.
she functioned?
In this one, I thought it was okay. I think overall how she eventually, like they're it's a more platonic relationship in this one. It's not implied that they like actually are sleeping together and everything.
Yeah.
Bow, 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 bow.
Yeah,
That was
and-
another thing that got hit by the censors, by the way.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
There was a lot of stuff in this movie.
Infidelity.
I think
Adultery.
it's ultimately weaker in this one, but it's only because she doesn't have as much screen time.
Yeah.
Mhm.
she's
Where,
more minor
and even
role.
in the new one, I don't quite think she has enough. But
Yeah.
We'll get into that when we talk about the new
Mhm.
one. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think it was
She
a little weaker
she
in
was
this
a
one.
character that was very lost in adaptation, I will say.
Yeah, because I will say I liked in the new one. I understand her double cross a little bit more
Mhm.
in the original one. I'll say where she eventually decides like, okay, when she kind of just fucks him over with the money. Like it's pretty much more just about the money, and she also doesn't generally like this guy that much, and you get that more where she's like, she's a little more hesitant. In the new one, I had my issues, but we'll talk about that when we get to that one.
I kind of disagree with that, but we'll get into
Yeah.
it.
I like how
Same.
their last interactions, and I guess we can get into comparisons later, but like their last interactions when she's like basically like, I'm calling, like, whatever, like when
Yeah.
the police are coming and the sirens and everything, and then he's like, did you call the police or whatever? And he's like, I don't hear any
I
sirens.
do like that. I will agree. I do like that.
Yeah.
But I think overall, I just like the newer one. But even then, I have some criticisms to get into, but I'll save those for the newer one.
That's fair. Any more thoughts or?
I think in the 1947 one, the psychologist, like Blake was saying, she's like such a small role it feels, but
She feels more like a last minute obstacle that fucks him over rather than
Yeah.
a huge part of the
And-
movie.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, I
she-
feel like that's an
there it
issue
is.
in
She-
both though. That's
She's like
yes,
the
yes, and we
main-
will get into that.
yeah.
She's like in the book, the main plot of the book takes place between her and him.
Interesting.
So
and it feels more that way in the newer one too. But in this
It's
one,
still not
like
as
you said, she's
developed.
like an obstacle. She's just
Yeah.
almost like a plot device.
She kind of just shows up at
Mhm.
the end so they can have their ending.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
But
just
as
show
opposed to the
him-
new movie where she's more involved, but still, like I said, we'll
Mhm.
get into it.
So
Okay.
so this new film directed by Guillermo del Toro, from famous for like his
A
large
lot.
body of works, is like his large scope, mostly fantasy and like darker storytelling from films like
Kronos is his best movie.
Mimic, Devil's Backbone, Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, Shape of Water. He's got a pretty wide array of different kinds of stories, different films and stuff. So I guess really quick, dude, would you guys want to go over your experiences with Del Toro's filmography, and like, do you have a particular favorite or anything?
Well, my favorite is Kronos. 'cause
Oh,
it's
really?
It's
Is
his
it?
best movie.
Cronus has been on my watch list for frickin' ever.
Same,
It's
honestly.
kind of
My-
it,
my
it falls
favorite-
into my category of if you really want to make it that way, it's technically a Christmas movie. So you've missed your opportunity for the Christmas season.
We'll do it.
No.
Yeah.
We'll do it eventually.
But
we were
my,
supposed to cover Kronos at one
yeah,
point.
my favorite is Pan's Labyrinth.
That's fair.
And probably second favorite's like The Shape of Water. I really enjoyed that movie too.
That's
No
great.
love for
Yeah.
Hellboy.
How about you, Rose?
Favorite? That one's tough. So I think
Or how many have
now
you seen at least?
I have seen Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, Pacific Rim, Crimson Peak, and The Shape of Water. I think right now, as an adult, I can say The Shape of Water is my favorite. But growing up, dude, I was so freaking in love with Blade 2. Like,
Oh,
it was
Blade 2 is
so
awesome, man.
cool. So cool. And Pacific Rim, too. I kind of love Pacific Rim.
Yeah, so I'm pretty much in the same boat with Rosie. I've seen Blade 2, Hellboy, Pan's Labyrinth, all of his recent films like post Blade, and Pan's. I'd say Pan's Labyrinth is still probably my favorite, and Crimson Peak has like just been inching its way up more and more. Like I really like
You
that
just
movie
really
a
like
lot.
Tom Hiddleston.
I think
yeah.
that and Kronos are like his two films that I haven't seen.
Oh,
man,
watch
Crimson
Crimson
is-
Peak. Let's have a
it's-
night.
It's
I
awesome.
own the Kronos Criterion. We can have a night sometime.
Ooh, I might get it. I've already got the Pan's Labyrinth one, which is beautiful, by the way. Like one of the best looking Criterions I have.
So his
Yeah.
most recent film was The Shape of Water, which got him his Best Picture win, his first like real big Oscar win, and that's awesome. Most people didn't expect it to win. I didn't expect it to win. I was like, this movie's kind of weird.
It was weird.
I love it, but like I don't know if like
Love it.
my on my
the
first
Academy
watch.
would
See,
want
On my
it.
Monster
first
fucking-
watch, I didn't like it as much as I liked it subsequent watches.
Yeah.
if that makes any sense.
No, I get
yeah.
that. Yeah, it's like Crimson Peak. The way they advertised it, it was like this like horror film, and then like you watch it, and it's not that at all, and it takes you a minute to kind of adjust to it. And like the more times I watched it, the more I just fell in love with it. And Shape of Water's similar the same way, not in terms of how they advertised it, but just subsequent
Michael
watches.
Shannon is fucking great in that movie.
Oh fuck yeah, dude.
Michael Shannon steals that whole movie from me.
Yeah. You either wash your hands before or after.
Don't butcher that because it's such a.
So good.
We'll talk about Shape of Water one
Oh
day.
yeah. Okay.
Yes.
So this leads us to his most recent film, which was dealing with all kinds of production issues from Corona, which like most people have been. It took like a 9-month, I think, hiatus like in between filming because of what happened with the lockdown and everything, which may had led to some interesting choices along the way. This is his first film that is over 2 hours. Out of all of the other films, he's never done that, which is kind of surprising for me because I always felt like, I don't know, they feel like they last so long, but whatever. I think you just want to live in his world longer. But yeah, so what are you guys' overall thoughts on Nightmare Alley?
I liked it a lot, but I couldn't love it, and it's a shame because I want to love it. But I think it kind of suffers from similar problems that the other movie does as well. Namely, and I'll finally get into it because I've been trying to say it for a while, but I wanted the timing to be right. As much as I like The Therapist, and I think it's an improvement, I still feel like we don't get enough of her. Especially, there's a couple of things that I think really weren't fleshed out enough for me.
Of her, who? Molly
no, the therapist. The therapist. Yeah. One, I really just think we needed a few more scenes with her, because it's the whole point of the movie to me is they're kind of like in a mental war with each other. They're both very narcissistic people that are deeply ugly on the inside. One of my favorite lines of the whole movie is when Bradley Cooper says, "You're no good, and I can tell because neither am I." I just feel like we were missing a couple scenes. Like we had that one great scene of her psychoanalyzing him, and maybe we could have seen a couple more of that. There's also this whole thing where like she kind of turns him into an alcoholic, but it's like only because he's like drinking to like prove to her that he can. It's like his own fault. He's like, he's being egotistical, but it all happens way too fast.
That's more directly from the book.
But no. I think that's fine. I just wish it was fleshed out more. I think it happens way too fast.
I agree. One of the things that I really wish that they had fleshed out between him and her is his Oedipus complex that he has, and the way that he treats her kind of like a mother, and also a sexy mother, I guess you could say. It's very weird.
I heard Del Toro in an interview say that in this film, Stan has 3 fathers and 3 mothers. And I feel like I get that more when it comes to Xena. Xena is definitely like, I mean, strangely enough, there's that whole
she jerks
sexy
him
mother.
She does jerk him off. But she does seem to genuinely care about him, which is probably one of the bigger differences from the original, where he really fucks over Xena, and then she's like, "Well, fuck you," and then she just leaves. And just like kind of leaves him to his own devices until she kind of comes back later, and she kind of forgives him for some reason. But in this one, they stay on good terms throughout. She's just there to warn him and to try and tell him like, don't do this, and like, you know, to be that person that's like his guide, which I think works better in this film. I like their relationship more, I'll say.
And I think that they also missed out on the focus on tarot readings. Which was a major focus in the 1947 and also in the book, where, you know, the tarot cards, like they were literally like foreshadowing what was going to happen, and I don't think that they focused on that enough. And the use of tarot cards was very
minimal.
kind of
I feel like that key scene that was missing was in the 47 version. They do a reading for for Pete. And it exactly spells out his downfall, right? Like he's gonna die and stuff. And he's like, oh shit! So immediately shows you that these cards have more power, and there's a little bit more mysticism in the background. Which, ironically enough, because like Del Toro added a lot of mysticism, I feel like in this film, or at least the sense of it in like in terms of the environment and everything, but it's missing that, I think, that little extra oomph that like that would have been very powerful to see, like, oh shit, no, this is very real. Like, I mean, they say it, but I don't know, you don't really get to see it until the very end, of course.
One criticism I have, and this goes for both movies, the transition of him losing to the therapist to geek happens a little too fast. Now, I can forgive it a little bit more in this one, just because the sole focus is he's like a narcissistic crazy person, right? So is the therapist. Like one of the first lines that is said when he walks into that beautiful set, by the way, is the therapist says, "We're at war, don't you know?" And she's obviously referring to, you know, the real world, but that's kind of what's happening. They're both trying to prove how smart they are to each other, and they're both trying to like secretly fuck each other over. And that's also kind of why he's like, "Yeah, you hold on to my money, bitch." Like it's almost like a power move. He's
absolutely,
like,
well, it's a war of manipulation of people through science versus people through
Exactly.
spiritualism.
But it's a mental war. But anyways,
and I love that.
Anyways, I just want to finish my point. So because of that psychological war, I can't accept that would destroy him because he like lost and his ego is huge and it fucks him over. But still, both movies ultimately he gets fucked over. We get like one scene of him as like a homeless person drinking with other homeless people, and then geek. I don't know. I just with this character specifically, it's like he's such a little like con man. I don't buy in either that he's broken down enough. It's like in the original version, he's like pulling magic tricks on the other drunks, and they're like, whatever. They're not as impressed as he wants them to be. And then in the new version, he has to give up the watch that was his dad's. But to me, it's in both versions. It's loss. One scene of like him being a lowly drunk, and then boom, he's a geek. And then in the scene, they changed the line in both movies, but I'll just recite the new movie. Like he knows what's happening. He knew he's being lured into being a geek, and he's like, "Well, sir, I was made for it." I just don't buy that he's that broken, or I do buy that he's that broken, but we're missing
some transition.
We're missing some transitions into that.
So
I really think this movie. I can't believe I'm saying this. I can't believe I'm saying that a 2.5 hour movie isn't long enough, but fuck it, go full Irishman.
So
30 more minutes.
Well, that's the thing.
I want to. I wanted to talk about this because I think that it was a great length, but a lot of the additions that Guillermo del Toro did towards the beginning of the movie, cut those out, tack it on towards the middle and the end. There was a lot of story that wasn't there because in the book, his transition after he gets caught by her. So the big old rich guy that he cons is still alive in the book and is basically, he's like, oh, fuck, this guy's going to come after me. He's got his own private army and stuff like that. This guy will be able to find him and track him down and get him. And he's deathly afraid of that. So he's literally traveling around to hobo camps and things like that because he's trying to hide out and getting drunk and all of his fear. And that's where his fear comes from. It's really not too much to deal with the mental war. It's just he doesn't have that money anymore.
Okay.
So he can't escape from it.
Let me counter that. This is an adaptation.
Yeah.
He can just kill the rich old guy and be running from the law.
Yeah.
I think it's totally fine in an adaptation, especially of something that's this old. Change it up a little bit. Why not?
Yeah.
I don't think it would be a sin for them. Keep that, whatever, old guy's dead. He's probably on the run from the law, but whatever. But you can still have some more scenes. Now, I do agree with you on the sense that we spend way too much fucking time at the carnival in this version where like the whole beginning, it's so long. I do think they spend a little bit too much time in the carnival, and that time should have been devoted to him and the therapist. Or just with him and Molly, but outside of the carnival. I think we needed more outside of the carnival.
Because you really don't get to see him as a spiritualist leader before he goes like full on spook show.
Mentalist, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, so he starts out as a mentalist, and then, his transition is into, basically all these rich people are fucking assholes, so I'm going to take them for all they're worth by, speaking to the dead. He gets a house from a literal like lady who he reconnects her daughter with her from beyond the grave, and she gives him her house, and then he turns that into a temple for spiritualism. And that's kind of where he's discovered, and that's where everything transitions. And his goal is to get $1 million out of this guy.
It's funny that you're saying there's too much of the carnival stuff. Originally, Del Toro said that he had to cut out I think up to 40 minutes of the carnival stuff, which I think was the good call.
Yeah.
But he also cut out I think 20 to 30 minutes of the city stuff where he's actually being more of a mentalist and doing all this other stuff.
He shouldn't have cut that out.
Yeah, I agree.
I think
agree.
that really hurt the character development because getting out of the carnival, that's where his character arc really starts.
Yeah,
it's
I
like
agree.
the carnival is almost like the prelude to the film.
I will say though, I loved all the stuff in the carnival. I don't think they should have cut any of that because I was really enjoying it.
It was fun to watch and stuff. But if you're looking at the story of the book, it kind of was disappointing that they kept some of that stuff in, and there was really interesting stuff later on, like different tricks and stuff that he did to make people see their loved ones, and I thought it was all really
I'll be
interesting.
honest, when I watched it, I was entertained for the first 15 minutes. All the stuff with the geek and the Willem Dafoe just being himself. But there came a certain point because so I'll just also say this: I watched this one first before the original movie. There was a point where I was like, "Oh fuck, are we going to be at this goddamn carnival the whole movie?" So when he left the carnival, I was like, "Thank God." And for me, that's when the movie really picks up, as I think Miles agrees, because that is like the main plot. It's more about him.
Yeah, no, I agree.
becoming
I
a
love
con
all the
man.
prelude though stuff in the carnival, because I feel like that's when you see him like really cutting his teeth as like a carny, and him eventually like him learning the mentalism and stuff. And I like the prolonged relationship with him and Pete. I think that works way better, and it adds more to his guilt and stuff later on, and that like father kind of figure shit. And then he eventually murders him, just like he murdered his own father. I feel like that works very well. I think, yeah, just by the time they got to the city, it just feels like it's a bit more of a rush to the end, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, he was very disappointing. I don't know. They cut out kind of weird thing that, yeah, I understand why they cut it out. It was a very racist Hindu spirit guide that he channeled.
Okay.
Yeah, as a medium.
Well, I see why
that he
was
used.
cut
Yeah,
out.
that he used.
I
to
see why that
call
call was made.
I was like, oh crap! When I was reading the book, I was like, okay, yeah. But I could definitely see him being the kind of guy who would do that, who would basically like, record this fake voice of a spirit guide who and things like that, stuff like that.
Yeah, good thing they cut that.
Yeah.
I will say I did like the relationship with him and Molly a little bit more, like in this one, because it felt more genuine, and it felt like when they eventually fall apart, it's that much more tragic. I'll say it like I like the detail
I wouldn't
of
call
him.
it tragic. Good for her.
No, good for her. But I mean, just the sense, like, it's sad for her and also for him. But like the fact that she really did believe in this guy, and she really did like kind of fall for him and his scheme, where he's just like, I'm going to show you the world. We're going to see everything. It's all going to be ours. You're better than this place. Let's get out of here. And
he never really loved her, though. He just saw her for
her
beauty, and he was like, oh, I can use you.
Yeah. I agree. Yeah.
One key thing that I like a lot more in this version than the original is in this version, I do like that you really get the idea that he's starting to like believe his own lies and stuff, which I like. And it's almost like,
and they keep warning him not to do that
in
too.
the original movie, I think that he plays a better, like going, like in the original movie, it feels like he goes into this as a con man from the start. In this version, it kind of feels like he becomes a con man, but doesn't like quite know how to turn it off, which I like a little bit more. Like it's like he doesn't know when he's manipulating people anymore, and which I find kind of interesting.
So what did you guys think about the relationship between? Oh, I'm sorry, Rose. Did you want to say something?
Yeah, sorry.
No, it's fine.
But just to kind of like tidbit on him being in the carnival for a long time. Sorry, going a little bit ways back, and his relationship with Molly. Like, I do think that the carnival thing seemed like really long, but it was like showing his like, I want to say almost like addiction to power, and how he was slowly becoming that like crack addict for power. Like, ooh, I can manipulate Xena and now Molly and now all these people
and the cops
and the cops. And like that rush that he was feeling, and then his power over Molly as well, like being able to manipulate her, and how when she does leave in this newer one, it's like a huge example of him losing his power, which leads into him like hitting rock bottom.
Yeah, I get that too.
So good.
Yeah, and I think the focus that Guillermo del Toro chose to go with was more so on the carnival aspect and less on the mentalist aspect, which I do respect and I understand. It doesn't hold as true to the novel, but the 1947 version didn't really either. It almost feels like this was adapted from the 1947 film, because there's a lot of similar plot points that were changed similarly from what was in the novel, and it seems like where there was additions, it was additions that weren't necessarily taking from the book directly, except in a few cases.
I see. So we've already talked a bit about Lilith, who is the psychiatrist, and her relationship with Stan and everything. How do you think that shaped up in this film? Does it leave you wanting more or what?
It did leave me wanting more, but I thought it was better in this version as a whole.
I still like their story in the book the best, but I would say that this is better than the 1947 version of the film. She's more fleshed out as a character, and you see a little bit more of her scheming behind the curtain, and you do get those extra scenes like Blake was talking about that do help to develop her.
How about her initial introduction and everything, her calling him out in the first time they meet and stuff?
I like it.
Yeah.
I do like it. I think it says a lot about her character wanting to also like be like a power hungry like narcissist, like I'm better and smarter than everybody else, you know? And then also shows that challenge between them, and then ultimately expresses like why she would be going through all of this just to fuck with him.
Yeah, because she doesn't just like
Great.
fuck him over, or she doesn't just like, you know, blow up the whole bit in her face, but he then keeps going. And I like that they
Yeah.
show that where he's just like, oh, you know what? It's
I'm
like,
gonna
I know-
twist the knife.
Yeah, like, oh, why do you keep that gun in your pocket, huh? Is it because you want power, or is it because you want to fucking kill yourself? It's
Yeah.
like, damn.
You think you're
dude.
better than me? You're fucking pathetic.
Yeah.
Go kill yourself. Yeah.
Exactly, yeah.
That was
Cool.
actually one of the things that I found were similar between the two films, but wasn't actually present in the book. Because
Really?
yeah, the way that
Really?
the way that she was introduced in the book is very interesting, because Stan basically has insomnia because he started doing his whole spiritualist voodoo thing and talking to the dead and stuff like that, and he can't sleep anymore. It's like dragging on his mind. He's trying to keep track of all this stuff, juggling the different balls of people that he's got on the hook for his con. So he goes in, he phones up the psychiatrist, and she happens to be somebody who prescribes yoga as a form of like to basically
Like meditation.
to make people like calm down to her patients and stuff like that. So that's how he finds out about her. And he comes to her and is like, "Hey, help me! I can't sleep," and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they develop kind of she kind of acts like his mother and his lover. It's very weird. And then from there, he's like, I could use you to get all this information about these different clients and stuff like that. Let's work together.
I see. I really liked this version initially, right?
Mhm.
Like I liked their first interaction where
Yeah.
she tries to fuck him over, he breaks her down, and then their initial like meeting and everything when they meet in that in her office, which by the way, it goes into like just man, the production design on all of Guillermo's films are fantastic.
The
Amen.
set design and set dressing in this movie is fucking great.
It's beautiful. Like all the walls, her office was actually designed to look more like an alleyway. A lot of the wood paneling was meant to emulate Rorschach tests and stuff like that, and also the hidden like doors and passages like inside of the office were meant to again show like that sneakiness that there's something else going on behind the scenes.
And all of the scenes with her are so well shot too.
Yes, the lighting is beautiful. I love like when there's like lightly snowing in the background or when it's raining and she's breaking down his mind and everything. But it feels like we're missing at least like two more of those scenes.
Yes.
Their mental battle.
Yeah.
You know?
There's definitely a scene that should have been in there is the conversation. Well, they never really talk about Stan's mother or father. And that was a big deal between the relationship that he had with Lilith, right? And because they actually change the scope of his father's character and who he was, and they don't even talk about his mother at all. They weren't able to do it, unfortunately, but you know, there's a big chunk of their conversations where she's basically like, "Oh yeah, you know, you're basically in love with your mother. You want to fuck your mother," and things
That
like
makes so much sense.
and-
Hot take.
yeah, and so she draws him to that by basically acting as his mom. I
And
think he actually calls her mommy at him.
Fucking
He
him.
calls her mommy at some point or something.
Oh, God.
Yeah,
Oh god.
yeah.
Oh no, stepmommy.
Why didn't we get that? That would have been perfect.
Yeah, I know.
Well, yeah, I feel like that's just again one of those major scenes that's missing. It feels like we're left with the relationship because by the
Yeah.
end in this film, when she kind of fucks him over, it feels really hollow to me. Like I don't understand exactly. Like I get
Yeah.
why she like didn't like him, but I feel like another just small change they could
There
have
wasn't
done.
enough weight behind it.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
doesn't feel as connected to her as he should
Yeah.
be.
I agree.
It feels like it's a very loose connection. You know, there is that flimsy sexual connection that they do have in the Guillermo del Toro version that
Yeah.
wasn't even in 1947, but it was more heavy-handed than that. And there was also stuff where like she was telling him, "No, you need to stay with Molly. You need to stay with Molly." She was like in
Yeah.
charge of his life. She had manipulated him in such a way that he was just wrapped
Power.
around her finger.
I feel like the big missed opportunity in both films, but particularly in this one, is like how he gets her to work, or how when Stan starts working for Ezra Grindle, who is like the big
Rich guy.
rich dude who's like dealing with the guilt of losing his like girlfriend, wife.
So
And-
it was his girlfriend in college named Dory. She died because he made her get a back alley abortion.
Damn. So, like, I feel like in this one, or what they should have done is basically just change it to where she sets him up more for failure with Ezra. Whereas maybe she sends, like, okay, because he has his first real, like, medium thing with the other rich guy and her client and everything, and everything seems to go well. And then I would have liked for her to just basically be like, okay, you know what? Now I'm going to really set this guy up to fail by setting him up with this fucking psycho dude who I know is going to like crack or something wrong is going to happen here, right? So if she would have sent him to him like directly and not have him being like recommended by the other guy, then I feel like that would have been more like showing how she was really kind of fucking him up,
Yeah,
Well,
but
I think part of it though is, I think she's, at least in the Del Toro version, I've never read the book, she's kind of killing two birds with one stone, because I think she is trying to fuck Grindel too.
Yeah.
She's definitely trying to fuck him over, and she kind of needs Bradley Cooper to succeed, especially when you take into account that for her plan to fully work, he has to succeed, and then Bradley Cooper fucks over that guy, and then she fucks over Bradley Cooper. It's kind of like a domino effect that has to happen for it to be in her favor.
So
I get that, but
the way
that's
I
what I'm
saw
saying.
it.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, the way that I saw it is that she wasn't necessarily setting him up to fail. It's just like he failed, so she went with her backup plan because she had that backup plan, the escape route, where she had basically put all the pieces together. She was like, yeah, I want him to succeed because, we'll both make a shit ton of money if he does. But if he fails, this is how I throw him under the bus, and this is how I get off scot-free.
But see, I feel like that takes away from their rivalry and everything, because I would have rather seen her like just be like, okay, just from the moment when he decides to like, goes too hard on her at like that big show that she's like, I'm going to screw this guy's life over, because she's been, as they show, like she's scarred, and it's implied that it could have been because of Ezra or maybe some other man down the line, right? She's definitely has like a thing against men, particularly men in power. So I feel like this is her trying to, again, take down both of them, right? So it's like, I feel like that would have been a good play by her, is like she was the ultimate kind of puppet master there, ultimately,
Yeah,
right?
that
She
was
fucks
really
them
a
both
part
over.
of their relationship that was added by Del Toro in this adaptation. And I liked it, the way that their characters played off each other. But like you said, there needed to be one or two more scenes at least that
Yes,
really
I
showed
agree.
their relationship and it evolving.
So really quick, what do you guys think of Bradley Cooper's performance as Stanton,
I think it was fine.
particularly versus Tyrone Power? Like, do you guys think that Bradley was able to capture that like swindly kind of like sleazeball dude, or Tyrone did it better?
I
or
think that
what?
neither of them really were sleazeball-y enough.
Really,
Yeah, it was very weird because I think Bradley Cooper did it better, but both of them just seemed too clean, and they came out, even though at the end of the day they seemed like very bad guys, they
Yeah.
didn't seem evil enough, and they didn't seem like shitty enough people. Which
The
is
movie,
weird.
well, this movie
Okay.
dedicates a lot of time to show like the consequences of Bradley Cooper, like that old couple like kill themselves because of him, and you see a lot more damage. But in terms of like strict performance, I kind of like Tyrone Power a little more in the sense that he really sells like he's selling snake oil kind of thing.
the
you know what I
con
mean?
artist guy. Yeah.
He pulls off the con artist better, but Bradley Cooper kind of plays like the con artist that doesn't know he's a con artist a little better. So it's kind of even hard for me to really compare both of them because they're kind of both fundamentally different, like in terms of just character.
What do you think, Rose?
I don't know if you guys will hate me for this, but I preferred Bradley Cooper. Maybe it's
Okay.
just because I really liked the newer one generally, but I think, like, I see what you're saying, Blake, but I don't know. I feel like he was more like passionate about it. At least like his version of Stan was more like passionate about what he was doing, and the other guy felt. Sorry, the other guy. Oh my god,
Tyrone Power.
Tyrone. It was more like, I don't know, felt like a desperation, which is really good when you think about it, because it is a desperation. He's like addicted to it, and that's how
Yeah.
he becomes a geek, because he's desperate. I don't know. This
Yeah,
is a hard question.
I
They're both
kinda-
really good.
Yeah, I kind of agree with Blake a little bit more. Like the fact that like I think Tyrone probably played the better con guy in the end, but I feel like he telegraphs it a bit too early in the film from like then on, which I didn't particularly like that much. I kind of liked Bradley Cooper's approach more, or Del Toro's approach as well, where it starts off with him just not seemingly like that's what he's set out to do, but he becomes that, and then throughout it, like he gets really addicted to it, and then his ultimate fall, I feel, is way more believable than in Tyrone's version. Which, to be
True.
fair, he doesn't get as much time really to show that, but like by the end when is accepting the geek thing, I know you didn't believe it, but I was totally sold. I was like, yeah, he's beat to shit, he smells like piss, nobody wants him around anywhere. And so when he finally does that one scene, which was done in the first take, by the way, when he accepts, he says that like, I'm born for it. Like I don't know, I thought that was fantastic.
I thought that was
Yeah.
very effective.
I
So
thought
good.
it was okay.
Okay.
I thought the
Wait,
whole
wait,
like
so-
I was born for it.
By
it,
the
was,
way,
it was a little
So-
too.
It's
It
like
was a little too. I don't know. I was like, okay.
I
I'll
don't
eat
know, man.
chickens,
He's
whatever.
he's hit the bottom. He's been scraping it for
I know,
a while.
I know.
you
My
know?
problem is I think it's just my mind. I'm like, I wanted to see a little more leading up to it. I get it. It's fine. It was good. I just don't love it as much as everybody else does.
So I do want to ask you guys a question. What was your viewing order for these movies?
I watched the Del Toro version first, and then I watched the
Same.
original.
Okay.
Same, but
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I read the book in between watching the Del Toro version because I watched that its opening weekend, and then read the book, then watched the 1947 Nightmare Alley.
Okay.
I can
sorry.
confidently say though now, after hearing what Blake said about the last scene with Bradley Cooper, that I fucking loved Bradley Cooper's performance. He's the better Stan of the two. That's it.
So, one last thing here. So Del Toro has now said, because of like the long editing process that he had, especially between the COVID lockdown and everything, he was watching a lot of the dailies in black and white, and it's become his preferred version of the film. And it sounds like he would have basically wanted to release this version in black and white. Do you guys think that would have added anything, or would have like maybe changed your perception a little bit more? You liked it more or less? What do you guys think?
I think if they cut out some of the carnival stuff, especially the geek chasing scene, which I thought was unnecessary and they should have cut out.
Really?
Yes, I think that was too heavy-handed about focusing in on the geek, and I think that that's kind of one of the things that Blake's talking about, where they focus too much on the geek, and it's like very obvious where they're going to take it. Because that's a very colorful scene working with, reds and shadows and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I don't think that necessarily works in black and white, but I think that the rest of the film would have worked very well in black and white, and they should add in some of the stuff from later that he cut in the movie instead.
So I don't really think the black and white would make I can't talk. I don't think the black and white would make that much of a difference for me. And to be quite honest, I don't know that I'll ever really watch this movie again. However, if there is a director's cut that includes some of the cutout stuff, and we get to see some more of the stuff that Guillermo del Toro wanted to add, I would be very, very, very interested in a director's cut, and I'd probably watch it. And if there is a lot more of the later stuff added between him and the therapist, or him just being a mentalist in the city, who knows? I might like it a lot more.
Mm-hmm.
What about you, Rez?
I agree with both Blake and Miles here, but there is one thing I do disagree with Miles about. Because while I do agree that the geek stuff, there's too much of it, it was a little obvious. But when they're searching for the geek and he goes into like the fun house, which is not fun at all. It's so creepy.
It's a house
looking.
of horrors. It's not a fun house.
Sorry. It's, you think it's a fun house. It's got the spinny thing. You walk through it. But it's so creepy looking. Like, yes, it's a lot of geek chasing, which is unnecessary, but it would just be such a shame to leave that, like, setting out because it's so, like, ominous.
So I'm in the boat where I feel like I would love to see this film in black and white. I feel like it's one of the rare films because Guillermo usually works so well with color.
You know how you can watch a film in black and white?
Uh,
Just get an old black and white TV and like plug into it.
Exactly. Just watch like a classic old like tube TV and just hook it up.
Mm-hmm.
No, I feel like which is rare for Guillermo when it comes to like color. I think he utilizes color so well in like all of his films. When it comes like Shape of Water and like Crimson Peak, he's gotten like better and better at it. But in this one, I feel like there's so much. There's so much of the background effects and the texture of the world and everything would be like only outlined even more in black and white. And I feel like especially that scene with the fun house, which was one of my favorite scenes in the movie. And again, it kind of goes back to what I said originally, where it's like, yeah, I figured out like, okay, yeah, this guy's definitely going to become a geek at some point, but I'm so fascinated and I want to see how that's going to happen. How's he going to end up there? And I feel like that initial scene with the funhouse really, it shows the whole film right away. Not as subtly as I think that Del Toro was probably hoping it would be, but like it definitely shows he goes in, he looks into the mirror because there's lots of mirrors throughout, and that's like a big thing he wanted with imagery and stuff. And it, he has to look at himself and says, "Look at yourself, sinner." And it's like, so he's looking at himself literally, and then like above it says lust and like all the stuff that like, pride and vanity,
Sins.
whatever, all the sins, and basically he has to reflect upon those, but he
Deadly.
doesn't in that moment because it's too early. He's like, I don't want to deal with that shit. So I feel like I would love to see a black and white director's cut version of this at some point. So Guillermo, please do that.
Yes,
I
with
want to
the
see it.
extended stuff in the later.
Yeah,
half.
with a little more,
Absolutely.
especially in the city. Like I think the carnival stuff is perfect as it is. I really liked it, but yeah, a little bit more in the city because I feel like that's definitely where the film is lacking. Yeah. Okay. So you guys want to get into the final ratings of these films?
So I do want to mention a couple things that were left out
Okay.
that I haven't already mentioned. Yeah, so one of the big focuses of the film was Molly's relationship with her father. And her father ends up being kind of like Stan in the fact that he's kind of, a con man a little bit, always running from place to place. And then she sees that in Stan later, and that's kind of what attracts her to him. And then she actually leaves Stan at the end, once they split up and stuff like that, and she's done with him. She ends up getting married to a guy who is literally exactly like her father, a track gambler moving from hotel to hotel, and she's loving life. She has a son, things like that. And then also they missed out on showing Xena again at the end, because towards the end in the book, Stanton meets up with Xena and another character who's not even in either film, who is basically a man who his legs are tied in a knot, basically. And he walks on his hands and stuff. And they're running a racket selling horoscopes to
Herbalife?
people over through the mail. No, they're a mail order horoscope service. And they're like, oh yeah, you can't stay with us because you're too hot right now because Stanton killed a cop.
Yeah.
But they're like, yeah, but go to this carnival, and they give him an act to do, and
nice.
gives him some money to get there. He ends up spending it on booze on the way to the carnival, and shows up pissed drunk, and basically has life fucked up after. Yeah, and that's what leads to him being a geek. I think that was a better transition, where it's like he has a plan for when he goes to the carnival. He's like, oh yeah, I got this palmistry act that I'm gonna do.
Palmistry?
Yeah.
What's
Reading palms.
Reading palms.
Oh, duh. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's like, and they've got the whole setup. They help him organize it. They get him sobered up, cleaned up so that he looks fine. But by the time he makes it to the carnival, he has regressed back into being an alcoholic. And the only thing that they'll take him for is to be the geek.
I see.
Yeah.
Yeah, that could be interesting. I see why they would cut that out because I understand like the pacing of the film and everything. I will say I think I did prefer the Del Toro's ending in that sense, where it's just like you see him, he's just like this homeless dude is just completely falling apart, and then he's like, "Hey, look, a carnival! I could go do that," and he just like kind of goes in. But
yeah, and also they cut out the part where he starts a church, which was a major
I
portion.
see why they do that.
Well, it's not really a church. It's a church of spiritualism. He actually gets ordained as a minister or a pastor,
yeah,
right? And as like a world-renowned spiritualist and medium.
yeah.
Yeah.
You know
So
what's-
he has this church that's like, oh yeah, the body or the soul lives on after death, and I can commune with them. And basically sells a bunch of people on this idea of like, hey, talk to your dead ones and things like
Yeah.
that.
Talk to your dead
yeah.
one.
You know what's funny is I was thinking about what you're saying when watching the original, because the original definitely has more like spirituality stuff and how he's like using that to manipulate people.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was watching the original one, I was like, if this hadn't gone wrong for him, the next step would be he would found a church or something.
Oh, hell yeah.
That was like in my thought process, like, oh, this dude would definitely start a church. or
Yeah,
some shit.
no, that's like what he was going for. Is that's actually how he started his whole spiritualism thing. Is he started by like communing with the dead for small groups of people, and then that led into him turning a lady's house that she handed over to him into his tabernacle, as he called it. Where he called all the people who believed in spiritualism and things like that to come and listen to him speak. He taught like classes on becoming mediums and like connecting to the world beyond, and very interesting stuff. And you see like all of his cons, and they also explain how he does a lot of tricks. And with Ezra Grindle, he does a trick that he never actually explains, which is they've got a super accurate scale that's hidden in like a case, and so you can't touch it, but if any weight goes on it, then it lights up a little light bulb, and he manages somehow to put weight onto it and make it light up. And throughout the book, the therapist is asking him, how'd you do that? Like, and that's the one thing that he won't tell her, and you're left throughout the entire book like, how did he do that? And they never explain it.
They never explain it.
They never explain how he did it. I thought it was great. It was like kind of
Nice.
that like last mystery of how he did what he did.
Thank
That's
you
cool.
It
for
had
something to haunt me at night.
It
trying to
did have
figure
something
out.
to do with a cat hair.
Okay.
A single cat hair.
Yes,
Okay,
Yeah.
so do you guys want to get into
and maybe fleas.
our final ratings for both of these films? So what would you guys so Blake, you want to start off?
Yeah, they're both rated the same for me. They are both premium streaming. I like both of them, but I can't quite love either of them. But I do like them. That's not a negative for me. I just think that there isn't enough in both third acts. I feel like in both movies, and I have not read the book, so I don't know, but I guess Miles did just give us some insight. I just feel like in the third act, it always feels a little too fast for both of them. I want to see the transition from crazy narcissist to literally bottom of the totem pole. It always just happens a little too fast for both. But yeah, premium streaming, go watch it on the Criterion channel, the original, and then I'm sure Nightmare Alley the new one will be somewhere soon. But
Yeah.
yes, Guillermo, please release a director's cut. I would like to see those missed minutes. I'll watch your 3-hour version of this.
Yeah.
Please release it.
Yeah, and if you do want that extended amount of him falling deeper into his darkness, read the book. It's worth a read. It's not that long of a book. I think on Audible it's like 10 hours and 15 minutes.
Well, that's very
Yeah,
short.
Yeah.
I would just read it with my eyes.
Well,
Because he doesn't hate
yeah.
words,
So
written
Miles-
words.
yeah, so I would probably rate these both on the shelf. If I got a director cut from Del Toro, it might move up to the museum. Wink,
Yeah.
wink.
And also,
Yeah.
this and the director's cut could push this movie up a little bit higher
Yeah.
for me too.
And I think it's always that way. I feel like a lot of times movies don't really feel finished when they go into movie theaters sometimes. It feels like the studios have a lot more control over what goes in and what gets cut, and to meet a certain runtime or different requirements that the film has. And I feel like with director's cuts, sometimes you get a better version of the film in some cases. In other cases, it's just a bloated 3-hour mess of
Sometimes director's cuts are
yeah.
shorter though. I mean, it's just about like what they want.
oh yeah.
It depends on it really just depends from
It does just
director's cut to
depend,
director's
yeah.
cut.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would put them both on the shelf for now. I really enjoy the Criterion version of this. I do want to mention what comes in the Criterion version of the 1947 one.
So you bought the Criterion version of this?
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
So it is on your shelf.
Yeah, it is on my shelf.
Literally on the
Yeah.
shelf.
It comes with 6 tarot cards
Oh.
that were shown in the film. I think the Wheel of Fate,
okay.
the Hanged Man,
Nice.
the Star,
Death.
no, Death's
That was
not
the
one of them.
1947.
Yeah, Death wasn't included in it. Then there were like 3 other ones. I can't remember what the other ones are though.
Okay.
But it was really cool, and you got a lot of cool interview commentaries. One of them was like 17 minutes of this guy who was a historian of basically carnival sideshows, So,
Oh.
and he was talking about,
Cool.
yeah, like this stuff in the film. Yeah, they actually had acts like this, and him talking about, what a geek is, and that information was very interesting. Another lady did like 30 minutes on like film noir and its influences, and how this is really a film noir movie. That's, even though it feels very different. There's not the stick 'em up gangsters and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
It's
And-
largely influential for noir films moving forward, from what I understand.
Yes. And then also another really cool one was an interview with Colleen Gray, talking about this. This was like her first major movie that she worked on.
Who did she play?
She played Molly.
Ah, I see.
Yeah. And she was basically in love with Tyrone Power from previous films that she had seen him in.
How could you
And-
not? Look at
yeah.
his face and his eyebrows.
Look at his eyebrows.
Yeah, and you could just see her kind of excitement and joy with being able to get this role. She pushed very hard for it, and then finally got it because they were using her as the screen test actress against other characters.
Yeah.
Because she was part player for 20th Century Fox.
Nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
And yeah.
Yeah. So Rose, what do you think? What do you rate this? Both of them.
I'm with Blake on both of them. I think premium streaming. I do prefer the newer one. Sorry, I like a jacked up ending. I just want him to be miserable. Premium streaming for both. I think that, yeah, like the guy said, if it were extended, but just, after they leave the carnival, and if they had one in black and white, it would for sure be on the shelf, I think. But for now, premium streaming.
And honestly, that might be one of the things that's holding it out of the museum for me for the 1947 version, is that final scene that they tacked on at the end.
Yeah, right.
I think it kind of, I understand what they were doing with it, but I feel like it kind of ruins the tone of the film.
Yeah.
Same.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna say not to just repeat a lot of the same points you guys have, but I
Yeah.
share a lot of them. I feel like the ending ruins the 47 version for me. So for me, it's on
Snaps.
premium streaming. I understand it was largely influential and it did a lot of other shit moving forward, but for the most part, it was like it just. I feel like a lot of what I appreciated about this story was told better in the new version, which I would put on the shelf. I really liked it. I'm always a fan of Del Toro. It's just a great performance, I think, by Bradley Cooper, and the sets and everything. It's such a beautiful film, and the ending is what really kind of seals it for me. I do wish that, again, for the director's cut version, black and white, I would love to see that with extended stuff. But yeah, so that's what's holding it back for me. But I would love to see the rest of it.
Yeah.
At some point. And really quick, I just want to say Philip's ratings. He wanted to let me know. I'm sorry, Philip, I don't remember what you said. What your rating was for the 47 version for 2021. I think he said
Shit bucket?
no on the shelf. I want to say
Okay.
because he did have a lot of issues, especially a lot of the ones that we said. But yeah, for the 47 version. I'm pretty sure he liked it more, but I'm gonna say shit bucket because you're not here. I'm sorry, Philip.
Feel better, Philip.
Yeah, feel
His
better.
favorite
please.
movie of the year was Don't Look Up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He just
he
loves,
loves that movie.
movie.
Oh,
He
you
can't
guys
stop
should talk about it,
it.
yeah.
Yeah, you guys should hit him up on Instagram. Figure out what his Instagram is and hit him up and be like, yeah, Don't Look Up was the greatest movie of all time. He would just love to hear that from you.
Oh, just one last thing. Someone wrote in the notes that Guillermo famously says in every interview that the true monster is man. And I think that, I don't know, the Nightmare Alley, great opportunity to express that.
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree because throughout pretty much all of his films, that's kind of the same theme he carries from like at least the ones that I've seen, where it's like usually man is the ultimate villain, from Pan's Labyrinth to Hellboy 2, especially Pacific Rim, all this other shit. There's a lot. Well, maybe not actually
Mhm.
The
Pacific
Shape
Rim,
of Water.
but yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right, guys. So thank you for listening. We really appreciate it. If you stuck around, we love that. Give us a like. Let us know what you guys thought about these films. Have you seen the original? Have you not?
Or don't give us a like.
Yeah,
You
or
know?
not. Whatever.
Yeah.
We don't care. We'll play coy.
Thanks
It-
for stopping
Remember, a
by.
dislike counts for the same as a like. So
Yeah, exactly.
go ahead
Whatever.
and dislike our videos.
Yeah,
Watch
we don't give a
Chronos.
shit.
Yeah.
Watch Chronos.
Yeah, watch some Guillermo. Well, do you have a favorite
Yeah.
Guillermo film?
Why
Let us
is
know.
it? Tell us why it's Chronos.
Yeah.
I'm probably the only person that's his favorite movie.
I'm sure there's a lot of people. I think he said like if he wants people to watch his films to understand him. I think he said, fuck. I know Pan's Labyrinth was one of them. And it may have been either Devil's Backbone or Chronos, I want to say. I'm not sure, but
Oh,
yeah.
and also, if there's any film noir movies that you think that we should watch and talk about at some point, let us know in the comments as well.
Yeah.
The SpongeBob
Yeah.
Yeah, what
ripped
are
his
your
What's the
favorites?
SpongeBob noir episode? You know what I'm talking about?
which one?
Oh, he lost his identity or something?
Yeah.
Oh my
he
God,
he
so
lost his
good.
fucking name tag. Okay. Thank you, folks, one and all. Thank you for coming in, stopping by. Grab your popcorn on the way out, and we appreciate you guys. Love you very much.
Whoa,
Bye.
loves it.
Bye.
Whoa.